Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld Edition, the companion piece for the hit HBO television series Westworld. This is our Instacast, where we break down our immediate thoughts of what just happened during episode 4, entitled Dissonance Theory. My name is Roger Roper. Alongside me are my two hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Gene Lyons.
Howdy, boys.
Gene, you're joining us from New Orleans tonight.
Yeah, I'm recording in Uptown in the back room of a shotgun shack. So we've been inebriated. This is my 4th day straight in New Orleans. So horrible things have happened to my body, just like the hosts in Westworld.
During our live tweet that we do every Sunday during the East Coast showing, I saw you tweeted out something about live tweeting while getting a tattoo at the same time?
Yeah, I wanted to apologize to anybody who was noticing that my live tweets weren't that frequent. You were outpacing me by about 3-1. I was actually getting a tattoo and drinking Evan Williams at the time. So, but I did watch the show along with everybody else, and was enthralled as you were, Raj. Just had my hands full. I literally had to kind of turn over and flip upside down for a little bit to get my underarm done. So sorry about that.
So did you get a Westworld tattoo? What kind of tattoo did you get?
You know, I think maybe in the culmination of after we do episode 10, maybe when we have our big end of the season party, maybe I'll get a Westworld tattoo, or maybe just get the new logo that Dick has graced us with.
I think matching tattoos would go well. So let's dive in, boys. Like I said, this episode was entitled Dissonance Theory. So far, and listen, even a bad episode is a good episode, but this is my least favorite of the 4 episodes we've seen thus far. There was just so much exposition and so much that was happening, and there were so many flashbacks. I got disoriented at one point.
Yeah, I think last week I mentioned how I wanted to just come run to the mic and record because it was oozing out of my head. This one, I almost wanted to sit behind and watch it a second time because there were so many pieces that just came up, and I was like, well, wait a minute, where was that? Where was that in the timeline? I feel, granted, this one seems a bit more disjointed. In retrospect, I think if we watch it the second and maybe third time, it'll start to make more sense. But I enjoyed it still. It's much better than everything else that we're watching on TV today.
I really had my misgivings after this episode. Now, I know that it's the 4th episode, which makes sense that they released this 4-pack to the critics ahead of time. And so I get that, maybe they did it in that 4 episode sequence just to free it up for or to kind of close on a chapter of it. But what confuses me is that after this one, I feel all the subtlety and all the nice work that they did in the first 3 episodes was just thrown away by some really heavy-handed writing. I was completely, despite a few highlights to this episode, I think it's the weakest one to date.
Oh, I think definitely I agree with you. I was surprised at how much they did give away. I felt like the show lifted up its skirt and showed us what was underneath. There was so many times that I felt, okay, this is the big reveal. We now know. But we learned anything from, that there's actually the company has another representative within the park right now that's kind of analyzing Ford's new narrative, to the fact that the man in black is recognized by another human guest and has some form of large foundation that obviously does some kind of philanthropy. And even though he saved this guy's sister, the man in black still, threatens to slit his throat. There was a lot of pieces that maybe, HBO was afraid that they were being too subtle and they were going to be losing a lot of the general audience that isn't, maybe listening to podcasts or reading up online. And this was their answer key. Hey, let's get them up to speed and give them some answers.
So I think, Big D, what you're saying is there were a lot of theories that we've discussed and our audience has sent us in, when we read our listener emails and, stuff on the Westworld Telegraph. Are you saying that a lot of those theories were debunked during this episode?
No, I think there's some that are, I have to go back and watch it. There's some you get answers. People are saying the man in black, is he human? Is he host? We now know at least at one point the man in black was human. And because he's recognized by people who are supposedly out in the real world, that they recognize it. If we were in the park and we saw Bill Gates in there and be like, hey, Bill, thank you very much. We really appreciate what you've been doing for the environment. And he tells us to shut the fuck up or he's going to slit our throats because he's on vacation. That would show that at least the Man in Black does have a life outside of the park, whether he's human or whether he's a host replacing the original philanthropist. But that's a big reveal. I mean, people were asking, has he ever been out of the park? Is he an original member of the hosts within the park?
I mean, to me, the other thing that kind of fascinated me was the Man in Black. I think that was the strongest point of this episode, was learning more about him and kind of seeing a different side of him, that he's not just this malevolent torturer of hosts, but actually that he's got some other motives and that he's kind of thinking on a higher plane, that he does have even a little bit of wit and some charm about him, which was really nice to see. I think probably Raj, since he needs that little bit of levity, this was probably something that he appreciated. But what was interesting is he knows about Arnold. He says that Arnold broke the one rule, that he died in the park. The one rule is that the humans are not supposed to die. So that was really interesting, that Arnold is not just some sort of secret that's swept under the rug, that this is knowledge outside of Dr. Ford and Bernard.
Yeah, he says that Arnold had a story to tell, and he thinks that he had one final story, which was a story that was real, that had real stakes, where someone could die. What do you think? Do we have any idea what this final story could be? Is it the hunt for immortality?
Yeah, I think that's definitely what he's talking about. And you see that theme of immortality, and in the Maeve storyline, that the fact that she's identified that she can't die, that hosts never die. And I think she's kind of the first host to realize that. We see her and throughout the episode kind of doing the whole Dolores trick where she's remembering storyline. She's remembering dying. She's remembering waking up. She remembers being shot in the stomach. You also talk about, the Man in Black and the idea of finding immortality. He mentions to Lawrence that he wants to set him free, right? So is the idea that at the conclusion of the maze, will the maze be allowing the host to go out into the real world? Will it be that the host can't die? You look at was it Arnold? Not Arnold, Walter. Even though he was shot multiple times and then he, was pouring the milk on everyone, he didn't die. So was that a clue to the fact that these hosts have the ability to be shot and still not die, but they just don't know how to access that?
Yeah, I've been wondering if the maze at this point is a physical thing, which it very well could be, which would seem kind of a dummy thing, but or if it's more of like a technical thing, an unlocking of a code or something like that. But what's interesting is the Man in Black also, it seems that his ultimate goal is he sees himself as a liberator, right? And even at the point of putting himself at risk, which would be the ultimate game, when Lawrence says, I'm going to kill you, and the Man in Black says, yeah, maybe someday, the idea that he's even willing to risk life. Now, whether that's from a masochistic purpose of saying, like, I want to have the stakes upped, which it seems to be the case, or if it's more the thing of like, I'm willing to pay the price of putting my life on the line and having hosts and having AI be able to kill people in order to set you free. That's something that I'm willing to do for you.
I tend to think that he's not benevolent in this, that his ulterior motive is very personal, and it will be a secondary residual effect of setting the other hosts free. But I don't think that's his sole intent. He's not there as a liberator. From everything we've seen, he has his self-interest in mind, and I don't know what it is, but it's definitely not altruistic. One of the things I want to talk about also that we learned quite a bit in this episode that I liked was the background workings of the park, that we get some more insight to see that it's not just the narratives off and running and the hosts kind of have their loops intertwining. We see that they're controlling in the back room from backstage everything from weapon malfunctions to almost sending out a lifeguard. They give a report that Dolores is way off track, and they don't just kind of recall her. They send a host out to get her and to remind her of her loop and say, hey, we've had reports of the farmer's daughter going missing. So I think that was interesting. And a big one that I got also in our movie cast, Raj and I got into a debate about pyrotechnics, and we got into a debate about, in the movie, there's a part where one of the guests is put in jail, and his friend does a jailbreak by blowing up the jail cell. And we were debating back and forth whether or not you could do that, because you could kill someone. There's no simunition for explosives. And Roger's idea was that this was more, it was more like Hollywood. It was more, fake pyrotechnics. And I have to say, I'm embarrassed that he was validated in this, that when, the man in black is going to blow his way out of the jail with Escante, what was it, Escante?
With Hector.
When he's going to break himself out of jail with Hector, he's going to blow the jail door up immediately backstage. Stubbs gets the call. We have a request for pyrotechnics. Do we approve it? So yes, all the explosions are controlled Hollywood effects. So you were right, Roger.
Listen, that's not the only thing that I was right about this episode, but I want to talk about the pyrotechnics. They receive a call, like in the back room. Stubbs receives a call, or there's a request from one of the technicians working the board. Who sent that request? That's my question.
I think that's actually just these were like preset, when you're going in and you're getting dressed. I think that's something the Man in Black asked for ahead of time was these explosive like cigars, right? Like he it's basically part of his arsenal. And then that was a triggered, request to now use them.
No, that makes sense, because it had me thinking. And again, I had my tinfoil on when I was thinking about it. Like, is it a request from a host? The host, then send the transmission via, some sort of wireless connection. And then does that mean that, the Man in Black, if he's human, but does he also carry the same kind of power as Dr. Ford, wherein Dr. Ford kind of controls the entire landscape and surroundings around him? And personally, I think the Man in Black is somehow related to Arnold. Why else would he have why else would he be out on this quest? And we see in the preview for upcoming episode, he's one-on-one with Dr. Ford, and they seem like they know each other.
I'll tell you who did not have any part in requesting the pyrotechnics. It was the deputy who got his fucking head blown off. That was outstanding. I mean, I hate going for the cheap gore. I mean, I felt like, for anybody who, maybe that was a nod to The Walking Dead being on at the same time, but blowing that guy's head off was a big highlight of the show.
I think besides seeing the workings of the park, we also got some new info on what's happening within the corporate structure and with, the struggle for power. We see that all of a sudden, Theresa Cullen has decided to pull all of the investigating of the problems with the hosts away from Bernard and his team, and she's going to take it on herself. Does this make you think that she's on to the fact that Bernard's not actually doing his job, that they need someone else to go and do the work because he won't?
It could be a corporate power struggle, or it could just be Theresa handing it over to the QA department. She says that it's going to be Stubbs' team, Stubbs in charge of security and QA, that's going to be investigating this versus the narrative department, in the storyline department that Elise works under Bernard with. I think that she's more worried about her job, and she's more worried about this whole narrative that's thrown off the entire park. She's worried about the investors. She doesn't know anything about what's going on with Dr. Ford's new narrative. I think she's completely worried about that and what that will mean for her. And you see that in that conversation when she has that sit down with Dr. Ford, which, by the way, if there was one thing that I really liked about this episode, it was their interaction.
Oh, he completely blackmails her. He tells her in no uncertain terms he's aware of the relationship with Bernard, and that there have been many in her role in the past insinuating that if she does not, bow to his will and toe the line, he's going to have her out. And I just want to bring up kind of where the following scene after we see the Bernard interaction where he Theresa Cullen takes over the investigation, we're followed almost immediately by a post-coitus scene with Bernard and Theresa. I got a total weird vibe by this. It almost felt like it was a different Theresa and different Bernard. Bernard is personable. He's standing up. We see him. They're engaging. She says, you really can be, quite charming. I didn't feel like this is the Bernard we've been seeing.
Yeah, I disagree, actually. When watching that scene, the post-coitus scene, as you labeled it, between between Bernard and Theresa, I found it very odd that he was so observant about, again, kind of carrying on that tone of, when he was talking about her facial twitches early on, but he's so observant of her that it's a little unsettling, actually, that he almost seems to have fallen into this servant role. But what was even weirder about it was that she seemed to be divulging information to him that would be problematic if she were aware that if he were a host and she were aware that he was a host, that this would not be information you would want to divulge, like you get back to Ford. It seemed like it was a very personal, very intimate, very confidential conversation that they were having. She's either very reckless or not aware of what he is, or I'm just really wrong about what he is.
So are you still on the Bernard is a host bandwagon, Gene?
Absolutely.
And Big D, are you off that train? Have you stopped at the station and unpacked your luggage?
No, I think he definitely still is a host, but we may, again, I'm on the crazy ass timeline theme. I think this is a Bernard-Theresa relationship of some other time where the park was working more fluid. There wasn't problems. There wasn't the stress between them. This seemed like a relationship at a completely different time. So I still think he is a host, but I think this is during a different time within the show. Well,
so you talk about the different timelines. I don't believe your theory about the different timelines as it pertains to Bernard and Theresa. However, we open up the show opened again 4 for 4 on, through the eye of Dolores. She's downstairs in the review room, whatever we're calling it, in the debriefing interrogation room with Bernard, and Bernard is asking her almost as if the events that transpired through this episode were past tense. So, I mean, did you guys catch that as well? Am I crazy for thinking that he's asking her to retell everything that we saw in this episode, and that conversation that he's having with her takes place after the fact?
I think they probably had these conversations multiple times. So I believe it's just one of those conversations. I don't think we're seeing it again from another perspective, but we do see through Dolores's memories more information than we've gotten, without even words. Just, I got to go back and I want to slow-mo that entire flashback sequence she has when she goes to visit Lawrence's hometown and she sees his daughter and she says, "Hey, do you remember?" And immediately the flashbacks start flowing. And you know that one of the flashbacks is the black church steeple, which we saw with Dr. Ford. You remember Dr. Ford goes out where he's talking about his new narrative?
Right.
And the only thing in the middle of the desert is the black steeple.
Yep.
That church steeple is in Dolores's flashback.
Yeah.
It is the top of the church.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and rewatch this. Again, this episode was so dense and there was so much exposition that, it's going to take me 3 watches. Again, this is college level. I'm going to have to go right and do a thesis to prepare for our big cast. Other things that we wanted to talk about. What about the relationship with Logan and William? Some things that I discovered. Logan works for apparently a huge investor of Westworld, and we find that his motives aren't just for a bachelor party or to screw women and shoot hosts.
Yeah, this got me to thinking, what if Logan is the one who is kind of the representative that's there, that is alluded to by Dr. Ford to Theresa. I think it's a possibility, but more importantly, a very interesting revelation that we have is that Ford and Arnold started Westworld seemingly without Delos. Delos bought into this, right? So Delos is making an investment in this. This is they think that they're putting money into either something that's going to further their gains or something that's just a financial cash cow. But this is not their dream, right? That there was a Ford and an Arnold before Delos became involved, and if so, Delos may not have the whole picture of how much control or what, it almost it's a 4th layer now. So it's what the staff sees, what the guests see, what Delos's plan is, and then also maybe what Ford's plan is. So it really added a different layer. I was very taken by surprise by the fact that they weren't working on behalf of Delos, but rather that Delos bought into it.
Yeah, and Ford mentions that back then it was a much better experience. It was more pure before the money men got involved, and that their original plan was to never have guests in the park, that the guests in the park almost corrupted it. So this definitely gives us a new complete spin. But what do we think about Ford's new narrative? Any ideas? Anything that would need a gigantic earth mover?
Now, this is something I really didn't like about the episode, actually, was up until now, we've always commented on how much we appreciated the subtleties of the show, how it did so much with such little things as the way Dolores opens her eyes, or the way, I noticed in this episode, the way Dr. Ford says the name Bernard even. But then you've got just these massive, again, like you guys have alluded to in the past, these Lost type, massive, grand actions that really turned me off. I felt like this was a cheap exercise in with the table shaking, and then Ford moving masses of hosts all at once. What do you guys think of that? As far as it turned me off completely.
First of all, I thought Ford was a complete dick. Okay, I got a slave plantation vibe from this whole scene. He was sitting up in the balcony like a slave owner, overseeing his crops with his hosts. Why do you have hosts down there with pickaxes and shovels? You have a gigantic earth mover that's digging thousands of metric tons. What's the point of having these 50 hosts out there with pickaxes? That's just a dick move. Are we led to believe that the earth mover is coming to destroy existing parts of the park? I know the company's afraid of this being my, what does he call it? My retrospective?
Yes.
He says it's not. So is this something completely new?
I thought from the angle actually where that earth mover was coming in that it was going to actually take out the building where they were. Kind of like it was kind of like Ford saying to Theresa, like, "Oh, you remember this table where you dined as a child? Yeah, I'm taking the whole thing down." So I didn't see that, but I definitely thought by the trajectory, by that ominous angle that it was taking toward things, that this was something that was going to not just transform non-used land, but actually change the existence of Westworld.
Yeah, I totally got the opinion, or my opinion is that's exactly what they were trying to convey, is that they are going to bulldoze what Theresa said. It was her first experience. It was her first table when she came here with her family. So that's the thing. What do you guys think about, and what do you guys think about me being right about the whole snake at the Arroyo thing?
Yeah, you were correct. A broken clock is right, twice a day?
I was going to say, if we want to talk about people being right, let's talk about Dick being right about Teddy the next time we see him. Dick pointed out that they didn't use guns on him. They used blunt objects. Next time, I think you literally said, Dick, the next time we see him, he's going to be tied up.
I said he's going to be tied to a tree. I was so right. Yes. I was happy to see that. But another topic I think that was a big one here was the quick succession of flashbacks that we start to see. That there are multiple hosts now, not just, originally Dolores and Maeve. We're seeing that the flashbacks are a more widespread and big problem for the park. They're no longer just having flashbacks to actions within their daily loop. They're getting shot in the park. They're having vivid memories of the background. And we start to hear stories and start to see that it's so widespread that the culture has created a religion out of their memories. And I think they call them, dream makers or dream walkers is what they call the spacemen?
No, the dream walkers are actually the native, like that native culture, the ones who are telling this lore. They call them the Shade.
So the gods that they view is called the Shade? Is that what they reference?
The Shades, they are the ones who can move between worlds. They say the Shade is a man who walks between worlds.
So I don't even know that, we've debated before that, that Roger was saying that introduction of religion. I don't even know if you need introduction of religion. Just giving the hosts something very simple in their lives that they can't explain, and they fabricate the religion on their own.
So I was trying to do some research on the Shade and Dreamwalkers, and from what I understand and again, just from my very shallow discovery, it appears as if the Shade, Dreamwalkers, and Katsina dolls are all kind of representative of the same idea, that different gods or messengers from the gods would appear in humans' dreams, or in the Native Americans' dreams, and the different messengers represented different tales, and then they would create those dolls. So it seemed as if the Katsina doll, that's what they were carrying. It was shaped in the the spaceman, which we all know is the kind of the technician. I made the joke on Twitter that it kind of reminded me of Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan in Back to the Future. But I like your idea, Big D, of the idea that the hosts seem to be making up their own religion as they go on, as they become more cognizant of their surroundings and their being.
So I just thought of this. I'm putting pieces together as we're discussing this. If possibly Billy is the representative of the corporation who is already in the park, that would change his entire interest within Dolores. We always assume that he's after Dolores for a romantic purpose, that he's kind of infatuated with her. What if he knows she is special, and that's why he's following her so intensely?
I think you just re-sparked the entire William is the Man in Black theory.
It's a good theory. I don't know if William and Logan work together for the same company.
It's believable that possibly Billy is the rep, because he's coming into it with he's a rookie within the park. So if you want somebody to come in, if you want a secret shopper, you want someone to come in who's never been there before, they can give you a fresh, clear-eyed view of your process or whatever that you want to be analyzed. You don't want to have it be Logan because he's already tainted. He's been there multiple times. He already has his view set. You send in Billy the virgin, and Billy would give you an honest, open, assessment.
I want to get to the elephant in the room here. If we can talk about Naked Armistice and the body snake. I was literally being tattooed while watching this scene, and this character, the Man in Black, seems enthralled with her. I am just absolutely into this character right now. What's strange about it is that she's not like some sort of omnipotent being. She gets killed quite regularly, but there's this toughness. There's a sass about her. Do we feel that she is something special, or is she just written to be interesting?
Well, I think what's special about her is we saw in the flashback during episode 3, she was in that group of original hosts that Dr. Ford was recollecting back. And you saw her as he was going through the narrative and kind of explaining to Bernard, she had scratches all over her. And there seems to be some sort of connection between her and Wyatt. So I think she's special. I think she's key. She's integral to the story. Obviously, we heard for the first time from Logan that there's Easter eggs uncovering. I think she's an Easter egg, but she's definitely, a regular host. But I don't know if her story is true or that was written for her, the whole snake thing. But I'm definitely intrigued by her, and I'm glad that they've expanded upon her character and made her more than just a sidekick to Hector Gang.
Well, I mean, you said it. You hit the nail right on the head there, Raj. I mean, her connection with Wyatt is inextricable, right? So Wyatt and his men, they took out her family according to her backstory, right? And that she's painting the snake panel by panel with their blood, which I absolutely loved. And there's just all that's left is the head of the snake. So she's on a collision course with Wyatt.
Is that a new backstory that was imported by Dr. Ford, or has that always been her backstory? Because what's interesting is Man in Black, when he first encounters Hector, he says, well, you seem like you were designed by a focus group that, you have all the tendencies of just kind of a boring narrative that I would never be part of. And she was part of that narrative, right? Now is the new backstory with the whole Wyatt scenario. Was that added by Dr. Ford?
Yeah, that's a really interesting take, actually, to think about that these characters, it's something I hadn't thought about, Raj. That's good, is that, as we're watching the show, characters are changing, right? But we've just assumed so far that the characters are changing, because they're going through some sort of a development process. But what if they're changing, because it fits the narrative better? And on a more meta level, what if they're changing because it's more entertaining to us? I felt like HBO was talking to us a couple different times. One with the Man in Black calling out arguably the most intentionally alluring character in Hector, right? That he's like swashbuckling and handsome, and he looks cool, and his outfit's cool, and he's not a bad guy really. Like, he's respectful to the ladies, and he's sexy and all that. And again, there was another Logan did another aside to the audience, I think, when he says to Dolores, "You're gonna grow to love me, I promise." Like, you find me disgusting now, but I'm an acquired taste, which I think is a huge tell from HBO that he's gonna be considered some sort of a hero character. And I found myself in that shootout really liking him, where he takes the time to have a swig before he goes out and shoots out a couple other guys.
Yeah, there's no way that backstory was written by Sizemore. That was too dark, fucked up, twisted, and too original. The fact that, horned men rode into town and slit her mother from throat to her sex, and then, she had to, bathe herself in the blood to get away from it. This is a dark, dark backstory. There's no way this was original. So maybe this is part of the new narrative, but I want to learn more.
You're saying Sizemore, a guy who came up with the Ouroboros, came up with self-cannibalism, is incapable of coming up with this backstory?
Well, the tattoo, tying it into, tattooing herself with the blood, and, he could come up with the self-cannibalization and the other ones, but there's no way he'd come up with that deep of a story.
I noticed something that I wanted to call out. You remember the Indian that's with the girl when she drops the doll?
Yeah, he's in town. That's part of his narrative. That's the guy with the cock nose.
Yeah, so is he the Indian from Red River Odyssey?
Yes, he was the Indian from Red River Odyssey,
right,
repurposed for the new narrative.
I just thought it was curious that was the guy. I think it was the same guy.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's why they're trying to tip us off to maybe the sequence of this happening.
Yeah,
but without a doubt, that's the Indian that was part of Red River Odyssey.
Yeah, and I thought that at the bottom of the Katsina doll that the girl drops, I thought there would be a maze, but I went back and I froze the screen, and it's just the wood rings. But you talk about the carving there. The carving, Bernard points out to Elsie that she needs to stop looking deeper into the meanings, and that she just needs to look at these hosts as robots. And he points out that it's not Orion, or it doesn't appear to be Orion, because Orion has 4 stars in the belt, and or the carving has 4 stars in the belt, and Orion only has 3 stars in the belt. What is that carving then if it's not Orion? And does it mean anything?
I think that's a great question, Raj, in that, again, we're making sense of what we're seeing. And Bernard even says to Elsie that, he goes, the hosts aren't imagining things. You're imagining things, and again, it is, I think that one of the big reveals of the show is going to be an anti-reveal. It's going to be kind of a pointing out that so many things meant nothing because, one, that's life, and two, there, as the park goes or makes a transition from a calculated entertainment park to real life, it's kind of the reverse of what the Man in Black appreciates about it, right? The Man in Black says everything here has a purpose, everything, has a meaning. And as it makes sense, and as it approaches a real world, as things become more real, as these hosts become more real, less is going to make sense. Life doesn't make sense. Humans don't make sense.
Last 2 things I want to say. I love the call out of the upgrade, the video game reference. When Logan kills the dude and he looks at his gun and says, picks up a better one and says, nice upgrade. I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I was confused there. I thought he meant that they had upgraded the weapons.
No, hell no. Like when you're a noob in a game and you're running around and you haven't hit a certain level, so you only have access to specific weapons. You kill someone who's got that great weapon, you swap it out and you pick it up, and now you're running around with it.
That's so good.
So it's an upgrade that you didn't earn yet, but you're like, yes, upgrade.
So was that the Easter egg?
No. Then they mention later when they catch Slim and he mentions El Lazo, and they say, "Oh, hey," and he shoots the deputy. He says, "You don't even know what we just walked into. We walked into an Easter egg." So he's referenced already that El Lazo is kind of an extra mission. It's an add-on. Maybe it's like a map. It's a bonus map pack, that they've been searching for. So the video game references just roll deep.
So did I catch it correctly, though, that when they embarked upon that, when Logan tells William, let's go to come with me, let's just go down a dark path for a little bit. Is it just the two of them going on this path?
Yeah, it looked like it. And Slim was no longer bound. He was not handcuffed or tied up. They were drinking together and it looked like they were off on the Black Hat mission together.
I didn't catch that. So it's just going to be William and Dolores.
That's what it looks like. It looks like they're splitting
Interesting.
up.
Interesting. Is there anything else that we want to talk before we wrap up? I know that, we've got a lot to talk about for our big cast. But before we end our Instacast, anything else, boys?
No, not until I watch it again.
Yeah, I need to rewatch this again. Please send in your theories. Every Thursday, we release what we call our Westworld Telegraph, where we discuss your thoughts and your analysis. You can do that by emailing us, hosts@shatontv.com. We post all of your theories on our website, which is shatontv.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram @shatontv. And you can also find us on Facebook. Just search Shat on TV Westworld. On behalf of my two co-hosts, Gene Lyons and Big D, Dick Ebert, this is the Raj saying we'll see you next time here at Westworld.